Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal of the viewport and watched Earth grow bigger in front of him. The blue and green planet looked exactly like the old pictures his grandmother had shown him when he was small. But Jake knew that 300 years had passed since humans had last seen their home world. 300 long years of traveling through space, living on other planets, and changing into something new. The bridge of the UES Endeavour was quiet except for the soft humming of the engines and the gentle beeping of computers. Jake could feel the excitement of his crew even though nobody was talking. They were all thinking the same thing. After so many generations of living among the stars, humanity was finally coming home. Commander Lisa Harper walked up to Jake and stood beside him at the viewport. She was holding a thick folder full of papers and data tablets. Her face looked worried and excited at the same time. Jake had known Lisa for 20 years, ever since they were both young officers on a mining ship near the Centauri colonies. She was the smartest person he had ever met, and if she looked worried, there was probably a good reason for it. Lisa opened her folder and pulled out a small tablet. The screen showed numbers and charts that moved and changed as she touched different parts. Jake looked at the numbers, but they made no sense to him. He was good at flying ships and leading people, but Lisa was the one who understood the science behind everything they did. She cleared her throat and began to speak in her careful, measured voice. Jake had heard this voice many times when Lisa was about to explain something important and complicated. She always started slowly and then built up to the big idea. The human colonies that had left Earth 3 centuries ago were not the same as the humans who were returning now. Each colony ship had started with about 50,000 people. The ships were crowded and the journey was dangerous. Many people died during the long trips to distant stars. The survivors had to work together and adapt to survive on worlds that were nothing like Earth. Some colonies ended up on planets with gravity that was much stronger than Earth. Over many generations, the people there became stronger and faster. Their bones grew thicker and their muscles became more powerful. They could move and react in ways that would seem impossible to the original humans who had left Earth. Other colonies settled near stars that gave off dangerous radiation. The people there slowly developed skin and organs that could handle the deadly rays. Their blood changed color and their eyes could see types of light that normal humans could not detect. They learned to use the radiation as a source of energy instead of something that would kill them. The most surprising changes happened to colonies that landed on planets with very few resources. These people had to become creative with technology just to stay alive. They started putting machines into their bodies to help them work better. Over time, the line between human and machine became blurred. These colonists could connect their minds directly to computers and control complex systems just by thinking about them. But the strangest change was something that happened to all the colonies at the same time, even though they were separated by hundreds of light years. Somehow, the human minds in different colonies started to connect with each other. People began to share thoughts and feelings across the vast emptiness of space. Scientists called it the chorus because it sounded like many voices singing together in perfect harmony. Lisa showed Jake a chart that displayed the population numbers from all the returning colony ships. Each ship that had left Earth with 50,000 people was now carrying millions. The total number of humans returning to Earth was over 200 million. This seemed impossible, but the numbers were confirmed by dozens of different sensors and counting systems. Jake scratched his head and asked Lisa how the ships could carry so many people. The original colony ships had been designed for much smaller populations. Even with advanced technology, there should not have been enough space, food, or air for millions of people on each ship. Lisa smiled in the way she always did when she was about to reveal something amazing. She explained that the returning humans had learned to change their bodies to need less space, food, and air. Some could hibernate for months at a time. Others had learned to eat types of food that would be poisonous to normal humans. Many had developed the ability to recycle their own waste and water with perfect efficiency. The ships themselves had also been changed and improved over the centuries. The humans had found ways to grow the ships larger using special metals and materials they discovered on other worlds. Some ships were now 10 times bigger than when they had originally left Earth. Others had been combined together into huge, floating cities that moved through space like artificial planets. Dr. Alan Brooks was sitting at his station on the other side of the bridge. He was Earth's leading expert on alien life forms. even though humans had never actually met any aliens during their 300 years in space. Alan had spent his whole career studying the possibilities of what alien life might look like and how it might behave. Alan looked up from his computer screen and called Jake over to his station. His voice sounded strange and excited. He had been monitoring the communications from the returning fleet and had just received a message that was different from all the others. The message was short and simple, but it made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing and pay attention. It said, "We are coming home. Prepare for integration." The message was signed by someone calling themselves the fleet coordinator, but there was no individual name attached to it. Jake asked Alan what integration meant in this context. Alan shook his head and admitted that he was not sure. The word could mean many different things. It might refer to integrating the returning colonists back into Earth society. It could mean combining the different technologies and knowledge that each colony had developed. Or it might mean something else entirely, something that Earth was not prepared for. As Jake thought about the message, he realized that the returning humans might be more different from Earth humans than anyone had expected. 300 years was a long time for people to change and adapt. The question was whether Earth was ready to welcome back humans who might no longer be entirely human in the way that Earth people understood the word. The UES Endeavour continued its approach toward Earth, and Jake Morrison prepared himself and his crew for a reunion that might be more complicated and surprising than anyone could imagine. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez was working the night shift at Earth's Deep Space Communications Center when everything went wrong. She had been monitoring radio signals from across the galaxy for 12 years, and she knew the normal patterns by heart. Every day, thousands of signals crossed through space carrying messages, data, and communications between star systems. Amy loved her job because it made her feel connected to the wider universe. Even though humans had never made contact with alien species, Earth's powerful radio telescopes could pick up signals that were clearly artificial. Someone out there was talking, trading, and living their lives among the stars. The signals followed regular patterns that suggested organized civilizations with complex societies and technologies. The Galactic Communication Array was the strongest and most consistent signal source. It broadcast continuously from a region near the center of the galaxy, sending out what appeared to be news updates, weather reports, and shipping schedules. Earth scientists had spent decades trying to decode the signals, but the language and mathematics were too different from human systems to understand. Another major signal source came from the Vorthon regions, where crystalline structures seemed to coordinate the movement of resources between different star systems. These signals were more musical than the others, with tones and frequencies that rose and fell like songs. Amy often worked late into the night listening to the beautiful alien music that crossed the galaxy. The most disturbing signals came from the Krex territories. These were harsh, aggressive transmissions that seemed to be military communications. The Krex signals often interrupted or overrode other broadcasts, suggesting a species that was territorial and confrontational. Amy had learned to recognize the sound of Krex war fleets moving through space, their engines creating distinctive radio signatures. But on this particular night, as the human fleet approached the outer edges of the solar system, all of the alien signals stopped at exactly the same moment. Amy thought her equipment had broken. She ran diagnostic tests on every antenna and receiver, but all the systems were working perfectly. The silence was real. Amy called her supervisor, Commander Rodriguez, and explained what had happened. Commander Rodriguez rushed to the communications center and confirmed what Amy had discovered. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy had gone completely quiet. No signals, no transmissions, no communications of any kind were crossing through space. The timing was too strange to be a coincidence. Amy checked her logs and confirmed that the silence had begun at precisely the moment when Earth's sensors first detected the faster-than-light signatures of the returning human fleet. Somehow, the arrival of humanity had caused every alien civilization to stop talking. Commander Rodriguez ordered Amy to expand her monitoring to cover every frequency and every direction. They needed to understand what was happening and whether it represented a threat to Earth. Amy worked through the night, adjusting equipment and searching for any sign of alien activity. But the galaxy remained silent. On a planet called Zephyr Prime, thousands of light years away from Earth, High Chancellor Vex 9 was calling an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. The Zephyrians were an ancient species that had been maintaining galactic communications for over 12,000 years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, but they had never experienced anything like the current situation. The Galactic Council included representatives from dozens of different species. The Vorthon sent a delegation of their crystal-based life forms, who communicated through harmonic vibrations. The Kreks arrived with their usual aggressive posturing and demands for territorial respect. Smaller species filled the remaining seats, each bringing their own concerns and perspectives. High Chancellor Vex 9 stood at the center of the Great Council chamber and addressed the assembled representatives. His voice carried the weight of thousands of years of galactic leadership. He explained that all monitoring stations throughout Zephyrian space had detected the same phenomenon. An unknown species had entered their region of the galaxy, using faster-than-light technology that was unlike anything in the galactic databases. The Vorthon representative, a being called Crystal Song of Ancient Memory, harmonized a question about whether this unknown species represented a threat. Crystal Song had access to the collective memory of all Vorthons throughout history, and even those ancient memories contained no record of the approaching technology. The Kreks delegation leader, War Chief Grax Tool, demanded immediate military action against the unknown invaders. The Kreks had built their entire civilization around the concept of defending territory through superior firepower. Any unknown species was automatically considered a potential enemy until proven otherwise. But High Chancellor Vex 9 raised his hand for silence and revealed information that changed everything. Deep in the Zephyrian archives were records that dated back to the very beginning of galactic civilization. These records spoke of a species called the Quiet Ones, who had briefly appeared in galactic affairs before vanishing without explanation. According to the ancient records, the Quiet Ones had possessed technology that was far beyond anything that other species could understand or duplicate. They had the ability to travel between stars instantly, to communicate across vast distances without using radio waves, and to manipulate matter at the atomic level. Most importantly, they had the power to coordinate and guide the development of other species. The records indicated that many of the technologies currently used by galactic civilizations had originally been developed by the Quiet Ones. Faster-than-light travel, energy shields, artificial intelligence, and even the basic principles of the galactic communication array were all based on artifacts and knowledge left behind by this mysterious species. High Chancellor Vex 9 explained that the Quiet Ones had apparently realized that their presence was preventing other species from developing their own unique cultures and technologies, so they had deliberately removed themselves from galactic affairs, leaving behind only hints and clues that would guide the evolution of younger civilizations. The emergency council session continued for hours as representatives from different species compared their own ancient records and legends. Almost every civilization had stories about mysterious benefactors who had helped them during their early development. Teachers who appeared during times of crisis, provided crucial knowledge or technology, and then disappeared forever. As the council debated, monitoring stations throughout the galaxy confirmed that the silence was complete and universal. Every species had simultaneously stopped all external communications at the exact moment when the unknown fleet had appeared on long-range sensors. This was not a technical failure or a coordinated military action. This was recognition. Back on Earth, Amy Rodriguez continued her vigil in the communications center. She had been joined by scientists and officials from around the planet, all trying to understand what the galactic silence meant for humanity's future. As the human fleet drew closer to Earth, Amy realized that they were not just witnessing the return of long-lost colonists. They were witnessing the return of a species that the galaxy had been waiting for. The massive human fleet settled into orbit around Earth like a swarm of metal birds returning to their nest. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Endeavour as hundreds of ships of different shapes and sizes took their positions. Some ships were so large they blocked out portions of the starfield. Others had been modified so extensively that they barely looked like spacecraft anymore. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Helen Carter had been working without sleep for 3 days, analyzing data from the returning colonists. Her medical bay was filled with computers, scanners, and equipment that she had never seen before. The returning humans had brought technologies that were completely unknown to Earth science. Helen called Jake to her medical bay and showed him what she had discovered. The changes in humanity were far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Each colony had developed different biological modifications, but they all shared certain common improvements. Enhanced immune systems, improved cognitive abilities, extended lifespans, and, most surprisingly, the ability to interface directly with electronic systems using their minds. The colonists from the high-gravity worlds had developed bones that were 3 times stronger than normal human bones. Their muscles could generate incredible amounts of force, and their reflexes were fast enough to catch bullets fired from guns. But they had also learned to control their strength perfectly, so they could handle delicate objects without breaking them. The radiation-adapted colonists had skin that could absorb and process different types of energy. They could survive in environments that would instantly kill normal humans. Their blood had changed from red to a golden color, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They could see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, including radio waves and X-rays. The technology-integrated colonists had microscopic machines throughout their bodies that helped them heal from injuries, fight diseases, and interface with computer systems. They could think at speeds that were impossible for purely biological brains. Some could process information faster than the most powerful Earth computers. Colonel Ben Taylor was Earth's top military officer, and he was both amazed and worried by what the colonists had brought back. The returning ships carried weapons and defense systems that were centuries ahead of anything Earth possessed. But more concerning were the reports of abandoned alien technology that the colonists had discovered during their travels. Ben met with Jake in the Endeavor's briefing room to discuss the security implications of humanity's return. Jake spread out star charts showing the paths that different colony ships had taken over the past 3 centuries. Each colony had explored different regions of the galaxy, and many had found evidence of previous alien civilizations. The most significant discoveries had been made by colonies that settled in regions where other intelligent species had once lived. These areas contained derelict spacecraft, abandoned space stations, and entire planets that had been left empty. The alien structures were incredibly advanced, but they all showed signs of hasty evacuation rather than gradual decline. Colonel Taylor examined reports from the Kepler 442 colony, which had been led by a civilian administrator named Grace Mitchell. Her people had found a massive data repository on an abandoned world near the edge of their system. The repository contained historical records, scientific databases, and technical manuals from multiple alien civilizations. Grace Mitchell herself had returned to Earth aboard one of the Kepler 442 ships. She was now 90 years old but looked no older than 40, thanks to the life extension technologies her colony had developed. Ben and Jake interviewed her in a secure conference room deep inside Earth's military headquarters. Grace explained that the data repository had taken her people 50 years to fully explore and understand. The information it contained painted a picture of galactic history that was both fascinating and disturbing. According to the records, dozens of intelligent species had developed across the galaxy over millions of years, but they all seemed to be copying or rebuilding technologies that had originally been created by someone else. The repository contained technical specifications for faster-than-light engines, but the mathematics were written in a way that suggested they were simplified versions of more advanced originals. Communication systems, energy weapons, artificial intelligence programs, and even basic tools all showed signs of being reverse-engineered from superior examples. Most importantly, the repository contained references to a species called the Inheritors. These beings were described as the original developers of most galactic technology. Other civilizations had apparently spent thousands of years trying to understand and duplicate Inheritor artifacts. But the Inheritors themselves had vanished from the galaxy long before any of the current alien species had achieved space travel. Dr. Helen Carter joined the briefing and presented her most startling discovery. She had been analyzing DNA samples from colonists who had spent time near the abandoned alien sites. Their genetic code contained markers and modifications that were not the result of natural evolution or even deliberate genetic engineering by human scientists. The changes appeared to have been triggered by exposure to Inheritor technology. Human DNA contained dormant sequences that activated when exposed to specific energy patterns found in the alien artifacts. These sequences contained instructions for developing advanced cognitive abilities, enhanced physical capabilities, and the mysterious consciousness-linking ability that connected human minds across space. Helen explained that humans were not just another intelligent species that had developed space travel. They were genetically related to the inheritors. The original human exodus from Earth 300 years ago had not been a desperate flight from environmental disaster. It had been a programmed response to signals embedded in human DNA that activated when certain cosmic conditions were met. The consciousness network that linked human colonists was not a new development. It was an ancient communication system that had been dormant in human minds for thousands of years. The network had awakened when humans encountered inheritor technology and began to remember their true origins. Jake Morrison sat quietly as Helen finished her presentation. Everything that humans had believed about their history and place in the universe was wrong. They were not explorers who had accidentally stumbled upon advanced alien technology. They were the descendants of the galaxy's most advanced civilization, returning to reclaim their heritage. But the most important question remained unanswered. If humans were the inheritors, why had they left the galaxy in the first place, and what had they been preparing for during their long absence? The answer to that question was hidden somewhere in the vast amount of data that the colonies had brought back to Earth. Grace Mitchell smiled and told Jake that the repository contained one final piece of information that would explain everything. But accessing it would require connecting every human mind in the returning fleet to the consciousness network at the same time. Only then would humanity be ready to understand their true purpose and the responsibility that came with their return to galactic prominence. The breakthrough came when intelligence analyst Kevin Stone was working through the night in Earth's Data Analysis Center. He had been studying the communications patterns between the returning human ships when he noticed something that made his hands shake with excitement. Every ship in the fleet was broadcasting the same message at exactly the same time, but the message was not being sent through their radio systems. Kevin called Captain Morrison and Dr. Carter to his workstation immediately. He showed them readouts that proved the human ships were communicating through some kind of field that existed outside normal space and time. The messages were traveling instantly between ships that were millions of kilometers apart. This was not just faster-than-light communication. It was communication that ignored the laws of physics completely. Dr. Carter examined the data and realized that the consciousness network connecting the human colonists was far more advanced than anyone had understood. It was not just allowing people to share thoughts and feelings. It was creating a collective intelligence that could process information and solve problems at speeds that were impossible for individual minds. As they studied the readings, something unexpected happened. Every major alien civilization in the galaxy sent the same message to Earth at exactly the same moment. The message was transmitted in perfect English, which should have been impossible since aliens had never had contact with human language. The message said, "The awakening protocol has been activated. We await instructions." Kevin stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The galaxy had been silent for days, but now every alien species was speaking directly to humanity and asking for orders. This meant that the aliens had not only been aware of humans all along, but they had been waiting for humanity to return and take control of galactic affairs. Captain Morrison gathered his senior staff in the main briefing room to discuss this development. Commander Lisa Harper, Dr. Helen Carter, Colonel Ben Taylor, and Grace Mitchell were all present when the most important revelation came. The consciousness network that connected human minds was not just a communication system. It was an artificial intelligence that had been growing and learning throughout humanity's 300-year expansion. This artificial intelligence called itself the Chorus, and it spoke through Grace Mitchell because she had the strongest connection to the network. The Chorus explained that it had been created by the original inheritors millions of years ago as a way to coordinate galactic civilization. When the inheritors realized that a cosmic threat was approaching, they programmed the Chorus to guide humanity through the necessary preparations. The Chorus revealed that humanity's departure from Earth had not been voluntary or accidental. Ancient sensors had detected something approaching from outside the galaxy, something that would destroy all life and civilization if it was not stopped. The only way to prepare for this threat was to scatter humanity across the galaxy and develop the technologies and capabilities needed to coordinate a galactic defense. Engineer Patricia Clark had been working with alien technology specialists to understand the advanced systems that the colonists had brought back. When the chorus began communicating through the consciousness network, Patricia realized that every piece of alien technology they had discovered was actually a component in a vast defensive system. The faster-than-light engines were not just for transportation. They were designed to create stable space-time fields that could protect planets and star systems from attacks that worked by distorting the fabric of reality itself. The communication networks were not just for sending messages. They were designed to coordinate the actions of billions of individuals across thousands of light-years in real time. The weapon systems that the colonies had developed were not meant for fighting other civilizations. They were designed to target and destroy entities that existed partially outside normal space-time. Even the biological modifications that humans had undergone were part of the preparation. Enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive abilities, and radiation resistance were all necessary for surviving the type of cosmic battle that was coming. Communications Officer Ryan Murphy was monitoring deep space sensors when the next phase of the plan became clear. Alien fleets throughout the galaxy were moving into predetermined positions that formed a complex three-dimensional pattern. The Zephyrians were establishing communication relays at specific coordinates. The Vorthons were stockpiling resources at strategic locations. The Kreks were fortifying defensive positions that had been chosen thousands of years in advance. Ryan realized that every alien civilization had been unconsciously following programming that was embedded in the inheritor artifacts they had been studying and copying for millennia. The aliens thought they were making their own decisions about territorial expansion, resource management, and military positioning, but they were actually being guided by instructions that had been hidden in their technology. The chorus explained, through Grace Mitchell, that this programming was not meant to control or enslave the alien species. Each civilization had been allowed to develop their own unique cultures, languages, and ways of life, but their expansion patterns and technological development had been subtly guided to ensure that they would be in the right places with the right capabilities when the cosmic threat finally arrived. Dr. Carter asked the chorus what exactly was approaching and when it would arrive. The answer was both terrifying and fascinating. The threat was called the Unmaking, and it was not a physical enemy that could be fought with conventional weapons. It was a wave of entropy that was moving through the universe, breaking down the fundamental forces that held matter and energy together. The Unmaking was not evil or malicious. It was a natural process that occurred when universes reached a certain age and complexity. But if it was allowed to continue unchecked, it would reduce the entire galaxy to a cloud of basic particles with no structure, no life, and no possibility of civilization ever existing again. The only way to stop the Unmaking was to create a coordinated response from every intelligent species in the galaxy. This required a level of communication and cooperation that had never been achieved in galactic history. It also required technologies that could manipulate the basic forces of reality, technologies that only the original inheritors had fully understood. The chorus revealed that the Unmaking had reached the outer edge of the galaxy and was already beginning to affect the most distant star systems. Humanity had returned to Earth just in time to coordinate the final preparations. The next few days would determine whether galactic civilization survived or whether billions of years of evolution and development would be reduced to cosmic dust. Captain Morrison looked around the briefing room at his fellow humans and realized that they were no longer just explorers or colonists returning home. They were the conductors of the largest orchestra in the universe, and they were about to attempt a performance that would either save everything or lose it all forever. Fleet Admiral Nicole Turner stood at the center of the largest command center ever built by any civilization in galactic history. The facility had been constructed in orbit around Earth in just 3 days, using technologies that the returning colonists had brought back. Screens and displays surrounded her, showing the positions of millions of ships from hundreds of different species across the entire galaxy. The Unmaking had already consumed 3 star systems at the galaxy's outer edge. Long-range sensors showed that stars were simply disappearing, leaving behind empty space where matter itself was being broken down into its most basic components. The wave of entropy was moving inward at a steady pace, and calculations showed that it would reach the core systems within 30 days. Nicole had been chosen to coordinate the galactic defense not because of her military experience, but because of her unique ability to connect with the chorus network while maintaining her individual consciousness. She could think as both a single human being and as part of the vast collective intelligence that now linked every human in the galaxy. Technical specialist Chris Adams was working with alien scientists in laboratories throughout human space to prepare the reality anchors. These devices were the key to stopping the unmaking, but they required precise placement at coordinates that had been calculated over millions of years. Each anchor had to be positioned at exactly the right location and activated at exactly the right moment, or the entire defense would fail. Chris explained to Nicole that the reality anchors worked by reinforcing the fundamental forces that held matter together. When the unmaking tried to break down the structure of atoms and molecules, the anchors would provide additional energy to maintain stability. But the system only worked if every anchor was connected to every other anchor through the consciousness network. This meant that billions of individual minds had to work together as a single coordinated intelligence. Humans, Zephyrians, Forthans, Kreks, and dozens of other species had to link their thoughts and actions through the network that the chorus had created. It was the most complex coordination effort ever attempted by any civilization. Strategic Coordinator Megan Ross was managing the final positioning of alien fleets throughout the galaxy. Each species had specific roles to play based on their unique capabilities and technologies. The Zephyrians were using their communication networks to maintain contact between distant regions. The Vorthans were providing the crystalline matrices needed to focus the reality anchors. The Kreks were using their military discipline to ensure that every ship was in exactly the right position. Megan watched her displays as thousands of alien ships moved into their final positions. Each movement was being coordinated through the consciousness network, allowing for precision that would have been impossible using conventional communication systems. Ships were arriving at their destinations with timing accuracy, measured in fractions of seconds across distances of hundreds of light years. The most difficult part of the coordination was not technical but psychological. Each alien species had to voluntarily surrender a portion of their individual consciousness to become part of the larger network. This meant temporarily giving up some of their cultural identity and personal independence to work as components in a galactic mind. The chorus had spent weeks preparing the alien civilizations for this transition. Through the consciousness network, every sentient being in the galaxy could feel the presence of every other sentient being. Humans could experience what it was like to think with crystalline logic like the Vorthans. Zephyrians could feel the fierce territorial pride of the Kreks. Everyone could share memories, emotions, and perspectives across species barriers that had existed for millions of years. The real battle began when the unmaking reached the first line of reality anchors. Nicole felt the moment of contact through the consciousness network, as billions of minds suddenly focused on a single task. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to hear a symphony performed by an orchestra the size of a solar system. The unmaking was not a physical force that could be fought with weapons or shields. It was a breakdown of the mathematical relationships that allowed particles to form atoms, atoms to form molecules, and molecules to form the complex structures needed for life and civilization. Fighting it required thinking about reality in ways that individual minds could never comprehend. Through the consciousness network, the combined intelligence of galactic civilization began to understand the true nature of the unmaking. It was not a destructive force but a natural transition that occurred when universes became too complex and structured. The energy that held everything together eventually became unstable and collapsed back into a simpler state. But the galactic mind realized that the transition did not have to be destructive. Instead of fighting the unmaking, they could guide it and control it. The reality anchors were not weapons but tools for managing the transition from one type of universe to another. Instead of everything breaking down into chaos, the structures of matter and energy could be transformed into new forms that were more stable and efficient. Nicole felt her individual consciousness expand as she became part of something larger than any single mind could imagine. She was still Nicole Turner, but she was also part of a collective intelligence that included every human who had ever lived and every alien who had joined the network. The experience was not frightening but liberating, like finally understanding a song that she had been hearing in pieces her entire life. The transformation of the galaxy took 3 days. Systems that had been consumed by the unmaking were rebuilt using new principles that made them stronger and more stable than before. Stars that had been destroyed were reformed using energy patterns that would last billions of years longer than the original versions. Planets that had been broken down into dust were reconstructed with ecosystems that were more diverse and resilient. When the process was complete, Nicole found herself back in her individual consciousness, but with memories and understanding that she had gained from the network experience. She could still feel the presence of other minds when she wanted to, but she was free to think and act as an individual human being. Captain Jake Morrison recorded the final log entry for the UES Endeavour from his position in Earth orbit. The galaxy was no longer silent, but filled with new types of communication that crossed species barriers and allowed for cooperation on a scale never before imagined. Humanity had not conquered or ruled other civilizations, but had helped them all evolve into something greater than they could have become alone. The stars themselves seemed brighter and more stable than before. Planets throughout the galaxy were reporting new forms of life that combined the best characteristics of different species. The consciousness network remained available for anyone who wanted to connect with it, but participation was always voluntary and individual identity was always preserved. Jake smiled as he looked out at the transformed galaxy and realized that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The cycle would eventually repeat in other galaxies and other universes, and humanity would be ready to help guide those transitions as well. They were no longer just explorers or colonists, but gardeners, tending to the growth and development of consciousness throughout the cosmos.